All right, time to talk with our guy, Connor O'Gara, and he is with us on the Shannara hotline, the Alexander Shannara Trial Attorney hotline. What is up, Connor? How are you?
Doing well. I don't have a no contact tag on me right now.
That's
I'd
good.
love to try and figure out what that actually looks like. How enforceable is that? If someone contacts you when you have that tag that's on you when you're in the portal, do you get to then clap back at them? Like, do you get to like share that news to
Well,
the
let me
world?
use
I'm a
an,
little confused.
let me use an analogy here, Connor. Do you think just because a woman has a wedding ring on her in a bar that she gets hit on?
Whoa.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that's a no contact, is it not?
That was escalated, but yes, you're correct.
I'm just saying. So, like, I think this non-contact or no contact, I don't think it really matters.
He just went from NIL to IRL in real life.
Look, LT, I don't operate in that space, so I don't know. Couldn't tell you, but there's definitely something to be said for it. And who knows? Maybe teams are going to see that and actually go, oh, that makes Nico more attractive, and I actually would love to be able to pursue him in the portal.
I do think it's interesting, real quick, because I brought up the fact that I saw yesterday, and it's probably somebody just trying to fabricate it and get some conversation going. But Nico potentially to Alabama. I would love it just for all of the drama that would surround it. These guys think that Nico would be a downgrade from guys that have never started before at Alabama. I disagree with that. I think Nico is probably as good as Ty Simpson or better.
No, let me characterize what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily, Connor, saying he would be down. Now, are people saying Alabama, or you're just saying if he went to Alabama?
No, I saw Alabama as one of the potential destinations yesterday.
Now, again, to point out, if he goes in SEC, he's got to sit out a year. So he wouldn't even start this year anyway without some sort of legal
injunction
recourse.
is
Some sort of legal recourse. All I'm saying is I've seen Nico, Connor. I think I would, as an Alabama fan, if I'm an Alabama fan, I'd be a little more interested in the unknown than the known.
I think I would too. Because the post-spring quarterback transfers don't have this great history of stepping into offenses and looking particularly good. Even Joe Burrow 2018, he was really limited with that offensive playbook in the first half of that season. And obviously we know what Joe Burrow ends up being, but there's something to be said for that. And it's going to be a difficult learning curve for Nico wherever he ends up. And if he were to make that weird decision to go to Alabama, try and force the NCAA's hand once again and try and say, oh, I should be eligible immediately, I don't know that Bama would necessarily sign up for that, when in theory, this is the quarterback room that Kalen DeBoer should want to have. And if you can't make it work with the guys that you have, then I'm starting to question you, because you have Ryan Grubb on board now, and I don't necessarily think that would make much sense at all. I do think that there could be a market for Austin Mack at Tennessee if that situation were to present itself. I think that's a really interesting potential redshirt option for him, because Austin Mack, in my opinion, is not going to be starting anywhere in 2025. And if he makes the decision to try and play the long game and go to a place like Tennessee, and they decide, hey, we're going to get like a grad transfer who's got 1 year of eligibility left, and we'll also get Austin Mack out of the portal, that's really intriguing to me, considering where he'd be next year. Somebody that's still 18 years old, which is hard to fathom, even though Austin Mack is going to be entering year 3 of college. But yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces. I don't think one of those moving pieces would be Nico to Alabama.
Listen, things get lost in translation all the time. Several times in the show, Alabama and Nico's been brought up. There is nothing tying Alabama and Nico together. They were hypotheticals that were brought up. So,
well, there was the one report, but that was it. Yeah, we're just talking.
Oh,
hypotheticals
I
because
said
of
one in the 1,000 earlier. I mean, it would never happen. I would love it just for the drama.
yeah,
Right.
And just to clear up if there's any lost in translation moment there. Listen, I was seeing that there are several teams interested in Nico if his asking price dropped to $1 million. Connor O'Gara, do you think Nico at his next landing spot, and he's got the do not contact, so he may already know where that is. He may have already known before all this happened. But do you think his next landing spot, his NIL take home, is greater than Knoxville, same as Knoxville, or less than Knoxville?
Less than Knoxville. No, there's no way that guy's getting a raise. No way. And be skeptical of the numbers that come out and where they're coming from too. That's an interesting thing I've been thinking about, is he doesn't even have the official agency spin team that we see with a lot of these NFL contracts now, where you can kind of spin it as, oh, this contract is worth up to this much money. There's probably going to be some sort of incentive-based deal, and they'll look at the total sum of it as opposed to what he's making on an annual basis and what that is just for, the standard 12 games. But I think he's going to make less. I think it's going to be much closer to that $1 million price range, because this is what his team so horribly misjudged. Teams already have their quarterback situations figured out. Teams figure this out at the end of the regular season because you have to know where you're spending your NIL money. And it's just like with the recruiting class. You want to get your quarterback figured out before you get all those other pieces figured out, because you know that's going to be a big chunk of your budget. And so there aren't a bunch of these teams that are like, oh my God, I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to just totally abandon this quarterback room that I've already invested time, money, resources into, and go after Nico, who, let's be honest, guys, he's got some metrics that are not working in his favor. You realize, like, if you follow the PFF stuff with him, under pressure, big time throw, 27 SEC quarterbacks last year had at least one big time throw under pressure, and Nico Iamaleava wasn't one of them. His backup, Gaston Moore, had 2. Like, what are we talking about here? He's a fine player. He's not one of the top 5 best returning quarterbacks in the SEC. He's got a lot of areas to improve, and I think teams are recognizing it, and it's going to reflect with that final number.
CJ O'Gara is where you follow Connor on social media, at CJ O'Gara. Read him at Saturday Down South. His podcast. You've had a number of coaches on your podcast of late. I think Sam Pittman was the most recent one. Am I right about that? Who else you got out there right now?
Sam Pittman last week, and then Manny Diaz was the pod that came out yesterday. So trying to get a few of these coaches on and, kind of pick their brain on all things spring football. What does it look like to manage, the portal and all these different moving pieces? And, it feels like a lot of them, you guys might have a different experience. A lot of them pretty much want the same thing right now, but it is, I was fascinated to hear Manny Diaz say something about how, look, they have, this assumption that a bigger portal window is what we like ultimately going to lead to more chaos. And he said, the same, you could have the portal open for 9 minutes or 9 days, and you'd have the same exact amount of guys that want to enter it. And I think he's kind of right. These guys know at this stage of the game if they're entering or if they're not. So yeah, it's just a fascinating time, I think, to be a college football coach.
Who's got more pressure this year, Brian Kelly or Hugh Freeze?
For his job, Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze is the hottest seat of anybody in college football. And maybe I'll get pushback from that.
More
maybe
than Napier.
People will tell me. More than Napier.
Wow.
Yeah, more than Napier. Because now if Napier all of a sudden looks up, because he's got the Lagway piece. Lagway's still got another year of eligibility after this year. And that's what saved him his job this year. And in my opinion, as long as that's around and that's an asset working in his favor, that's going to be something that, look, Hugh Freeze doesn't have at this point. Hugh Freeze has a lot of pieces that suggest improvement could be in store, most notably with maybe the best group of receivers that Auburn has ever had. But I do think the pressure is on after, just a totally disappointing season in which I think you could point to a lot of his mistakes in the fourth quarter as to why this team ultimately did not get to that 7-8 win mark. His decision to continue to ride with Peyton Thorne obviously hurt that team last year. I know he's a friend of the show, but it's hard to deny. And I do think that even more than Napier, because Billy Napier had an 8-win season when people were saying there's no way you're going to be able to get to that place, especially after that start. So I do think that Hugh Freeze is someone that enters year 3 with very much a hot seat. And it's such a prove-it year for him.
I'm interested. I know through my reporting why I think that is the case, that I agree with you. I'm interested to know, do you think it's because of who Auburn potentially could get, who could be waiting in the wings, that would add to the hot seat under Hugh Freeze?
Feels like you have a name in mind, Dunaway.
Yeah, do you want to say the name?
No, I wanted Connor to say the name.
You want to use initials?
No.
School our coach initials.
I'm just saying, is there a reason why his seat's hotter than maybe a normal third-year coach? I was just wondering.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. No,
I don't, and I think they structured the buyout really favorably. I know my guy Brad Crawford wrote about this for 24/7 Sports about how they changed the structure of it compared to the Harsin and Malzahn buyout, where now they have these monthly installments instead of having to pay half of the buyout within the first 30 days. And so maybe it's a little bit more team friendly than some would suggest, but if you're wondering, is this more of a hot seat because, oh, I don't know, maybe a certain Lane Kiffin would be available? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I'll kind of wait and see on that, but I think it's just a hot seat for the simple fact that you don't get 4 or 5 years in this day and age. You know, you should be able to turn over a roster. You should be able to start, getting those positive results. I think what Deion Sanders has done at Colorado is great proof of that. What Curt Cignetti's done at my alma mater, Indiana, is great proof of that. And I do think, yes, it's tougher to do it against SEC competition. Totally understand, but you don't get 4 or 5 years and all of this grace, even if you are coming in, for a guy that was a historically awful hire.
Listen, I'm interested on Georgia in the SEC. This feels so different to me now. It seemed like we went into last year and there was so much pressure on Georgia, and Kirby with Nick Saban gone. How come I feel like there's more pressure now on Texas to be the top team in the SEC, and Georgia now, it's almost like there's been a valve that's been released from Kirby Smart. He doesn't seem to be under the same microscope as he was the last few years.
Yeah, I think winning a couple of titles certainly helps. And we automatically, in college football, we turn the page to the next coach who hasn't won one yet. Who's that going to be? And I think there's a very important window for Texas in 2025, to see how close they were to beating Ohio State this past season, and see what they have returning, mainly on the defensive side of the ball. To me, that's what suggests that this window is there. I think Arch is going to be a 2-year guy as a starter at Texas. I don't think he's going to the NFL in 2026 like every single way too early mock draft is going to project, just because I think the NFL is getting away from these guys who are 1-year starters in college, and they would typically like to see these guys start 2 years. Don't get it twisted. He would still obviously potentially be the number 1 overall pick, but I think the Mannings have played the long game with this, so I do think that's part of it, but it's because of all that defensive talent that Texas has coming back that suggests 2025 is a prime opportunity, especially with this schedule, which is once again looking really favorable as it was last year, and knowing that you don't get too many cracks at this. And it's going to be tough to get to that place in the 12-team playoff era, even if you're a team that's got depth like Texas. So I think their window just looks a little bit different. I think Georgia is still in line to be the team of the decade in the 2020s. And if they win that 3rd title, it'll be all but guaranteed. But I think Texas, people are just looking at that time frame with how good this roster should be coming back.
Connor O'Gara is with us Saturday Down South at CJ O'Gara on social media. He is on the Shannara hotline. I'm going to do a blind resume with you here. These are the 9th and 10th best passers in the SEC last year. Completion percentage, number 9 was slightly better. Yardage, number 10 was slightly better. Touchdown to interception was almost the same, but number 9 had fewer touchdowns and more interceptions. And number 9 we talk about as a preseason Heisman candidate, LaNorris Sellers. And number 10, we're talking about Nico maybe not even being at a Power 5 school. Does LaNorris Sellers just have better PR? Why is he the Heisman candidate? And his numbers are almost identical to Nico's, and Nico played in the playoffs.
You got to watch the two quarterbacks if that's the take. You got to watch.
Well,
the
I mean, I
plays
watched them, but I'm just saying. But the numbers are the numbers, though.
Do you not
Connor.
have ESPN, Brown?
I've got ESPN, but they both played 12, 13 games, and the numbers are the numbers. Why? They were
First
both
of all,
freshmen.
LaNorris Sellers wasn't fully healthy during the first half of the season.
That's a good point.
He left multiple games. LaNorris Sellers had the single worst group of receivers in the SEC. He did not have a Josh Heupel offense with, by the way, the SEC Offensive Player of the Year to hand the ball off to. Rocket Sanders was a good player to be able to hand the ball off to. He was not Dylan Sampson. And you have to look at the degree of difficulty with the plays that LaNorris Sellers was making. The amount of times that guy would break multiple tackles with free rushers coming right at him, keep his eyes downfield, and hit a guy in that intermediate 10 to 20 yard range. Countless. I mean, the Clemson game alone, if you just look at the raw numbers there, you're going to be like, all right, whatever. They didn't really have a good offensive day. Clemson couldn't tackle that guy. And it was that last play, that game-winning touchdown was a microcosm of that day. And so while he still has room to improve, in my opinion, I think the degree of difficulty of the plays that he was making and the types of big pickups that he would have in the offense to move the chains is entirely different than what Nico did last year. I do think that there is certainly more grace because LaNorris Sellers came in with different expectations than Nico. I'll agree with you there. But to me, watch the two guys side by side. You will not have that take.
Brent Venables, interesting study. Nobody's talking about Oklahoma, but you bring in Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer, and now you get Jaden Ott out of the portal from Cal. You know, the problem last year is they really didn't have any skill offensively. It looks a lot better, at least on paper. Do you think Oklahoma will be much improved this year?
It just can't be worse than last year on offense. It just can't be worse. The Oklahoma offense last year was what the Auburn offense was the previous year. Just anything that you can possibly think of that gives you pain was worth doing over watching that version of the Oklahoma offense. I mean, they lost their top 5 receivers by the end of September. They were down to their number 6 wideout making big time plays in that game at Auburn. And, you know, J.J. Hester has the biggest play of that game, and he's like their 6th best receiver because they had nobody left, and their offensive line was entirely new. They have to be better. They will be better. It's ironic that Oklahoma copied the Vandy model. They did the same exact thing that Clark Lee did by going into the portal, getting Diego Pavia, getting Tim Beck, getting Eli Stowers as well, getting all these different pieces from New Mexico State to say, we need continuity. Oklahoma is begging for continuity. They are hoping that being able to bring in this Washington State offense is going to yield those results. I think John Mateer is the ultimate wild card in the SEC. I think his YOLO style can be really, really good. It can also be really, really bad. And I wonder with the defensive-minded coach, albeit one that's invested a lot into him, if he's going to give him that grace, because he sure as heck didn't give it to Jackson Arnold when he decided, I'm going to bench that guy before halftime of his first career SEC game. To me, I think that he needs to be able to adjust. That is Brent Venables. This offense should be better. I love the addition of Jaden Ott, but yeah, I mean, they're going to be better. It's just a question of how much.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the Oklahoma thing. I think that's a big story. So I'll end with this. Alabama, in your opinion, as we sit here in April, playoff team or not a playoff team?
Playoff team, and I'm not just saying that to make you happy. Playoff team. Playoff team because the Ryan Grubb edition. The Ryan Grubb edition is everything to me. I thought that offense last year looked disjointed. I thought that it was just Kalen DeBoer trying to figure things out on the fly, and that was a bit of a struggle with someone that obviously had a more entrenched style in Jalen Milroe. I do think that this year, while I have more questions about the quarterback room, I think it's a different set of questions what we were asking 2 years ago. I do think that there is more promise there. There's more experience there. There's more talent there. And I think that with this coaching staff, you can trust them to maximize those abilities. I do think that defense will give them more grace. I still think that defense might be a little bit overhyped coming into the season, but I do find that the Ryan Grubb edition has changed my outlook of Alabama. Schedule is still going to be really difficult. It shouldn't be 11-1 expectations, but getting there with a 10-2 type record, potentially making it to the SEC championship, yes, that is my expectation now for Alabama now that Ryan Grubb's on board.
I believe O'Gara is Irish in its etymology. Was that a big win for you? Rory winning the Masters for the first time, one of the great Irish athletes of all time?
Shout out to Northern Ireland. Yeah. Look, there's definitely a large group of my family that roots almost exclusively for Rory, even though it's not like my family, you know, got over here like 20 years ago or something like that. They don't necessarily share the same heritage that one Rory McIlroy does. But yes, very much somebody that I've, you know, liked rooting for. The name Rory kind of pops. I know it's like on the male side, it's either, you know, Rory the golfer. On the female side, it's Rory from Gilmore Girls. Don't ask me how I know that. But there are a lot of people that I think, you know, can take joy in watching someone win like that and see the relief that they have. It's something that we see so rarely in sports, especially an individual sport like golf. But yeah, the O'Gara clan was rooting hard for Rory McIlroy.
Yeah, I understand.
Bladell, her name was Bladell. What's her Alexa Bladell or something was the girl that played that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Alexis Bledel?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh boy, you know.
I don't know why I
too
know
much.
that.
Yeah,
you know a ton.
Have you seen every episode?
You know a ton. You and my wife. Yeah, you and my wife. I was just going to say, with my family heritage, I'm always happy when we get a new casino open up in Alabama. It's really fun. Really fond of that.
Hey, look, nothing wrong with that. I can't say I have extensive family history with the casino world, but pale skin and, you know, coming over and doing great things in American sports. I guess that's what we in the O'Gara family do.
See, Connor didn't grow up in Alabama. Everybody that grew up in Alabama, which we all did, almost everybody claims they either got some Creek or Cherokee in them, right?
And it's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I think 23andMe has debunked a lot of it.
LT always doubts that I've got Cherokee Indian in me.
Yeah.
But look how I
believe.
Look at my color this time of year.
I know.
just screams.
You look about as white as a white man can get.
I don't know, man. Trust me. I'm sitting right there.
Connor's in the shot.
I mean, we're in a box with Casper here all of a sudden. Come on.
Don't take shots at Connor. All right, CJ O'Gara on social media is where you find Connor. Go to Saturday Down South. Watch his podcast. Coaches coming out all summer. Sam Pittman recently, Manny Diaz recently. Great conversations with him. Connor, thank you very much for the time. Always great talking with you.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care. Connor with us on the Alexander Shinora Trial Attorneys Hotline.